You're going to love these Karen stories today, especially our title story. Here's the first one. Karen demands to go through bear territory and almost gets mauled by a grizzly, hosted by Zemdix. So, for a little context, this story is not mine. This happened to my father in the 80s and the 90s, but I will write it in first person because English is hard. In the 80s, I lost everything I could. I dropped out of college, my father died of a heart attack, and my mother was somewhere in the wind. I wasn't worth the air that I was breathing. As a last effort, I saved up some money to move to a different state so that I could start fresh. I chose Montana to be my new home. Because I didn't have a college degree, I knew that I could only make a living with my hands and not my head. After a bit of looking around, I found work on a ranch. The owner of the ranch, let's call him Jack, took me under his wing. He taught me how to ride a horse, how to herd, how to do cutting and roping, and many other useful skills on a ranch. My goal was to have enough money for a deposit so that I could buy a house, or at least some land. After about 3 years, I had the money, but I loved the ranch and the folks so much that I chose to stay longer. In the spring of '88, I finally made the decision to quit. I was fully honest with Jack about what my intentions were. I told him that I wanted to buy some land to have a ranch of my own and potentially get married and start a family. Being the absolute champ, Jack offered me some contacts of people who were selling land. After some time, I chose a piece of land near Jack's ranch. I got a loan, I bought the land, and in the summer, I started building my house. By winter, the house was done, and it was planned that, in the spring, I'll build a barn and some fences, corrals, among others. In the spring, it was back to work, and before summer started, well, I had nothing to do. I had a lot of time on my hands while I was waiting for all the paperwork to be done, and I wasn't going to spend 2 weeks sitting on my porch doing nothing when Jack promised me that if I would ever need it, he would give me a job. Now, I didn't need a job because of money, but I just didn't have anything to do. So I went to my good old friend Jack to see if he needed some help. He said that he could use me to guide people on the tours that he was offering. Now, his ranch is not only in the cattle business, see, he also offers tours of the pristine nature that's on his property. Hey, I happily accepted the job, despite me, well, not liking people. Hey, but still, it was better than just, well, sitting on my front porch and doing nothing. The first few days went without a problem, but then a wild Karen appeared to brighten up the day. I was just returning from a tour when I saw this Karen in the middle of the field yelling at this girl, who was also a guide. I didn't know the girl, but hey, in my books, whoever makes a girl cry is a butthole. I came over to them and, in the most passive-aggressive voice I can, I say, "Hey, good day, what seems to be the problem?" And then Karen's wrath was now aimed at me, and she yelled back, "This witch has no respect for the desires of the customer. Give me a manager now." Now, I didn't expect such strong wording, but I kept my cool despite my hot-headedness, and I came up to the girl who was now she's just sobbing because this Karen was mouthing off to her pretty good, and I say to her, "Hey, leave her to me. I'll take care of her. You go take a break. You tell Jack that I'll be with this piece of work." She gives me a grateful smile and a nod and rides away. I go to the Karen and I say, "Ma'am, I can't get you the manager as he's busy right now, but if you want, I can be your guide instead for the remainder of the tour." She replies very politely by saying, "Sure, even I think the trees will be better than that witch." Every single part of my hot-headed self wants me to, well, pretty much bury this woman right then and there, but I keep my cool and we head off on the tour. And within the first minute, what a piece of work she truly is. She behaves like she knows best, and everyone lesser than her and everything should be given to her. When we're about to turn around and go back, I give her a choice. We could either go to the official route, or we could return by the unofficial route, which is shorter, but there were bear sightings reported in the past few days. I tell her that the unofficial route is quite dangerous, but just as I wanted her to do so, she vehemently objects because she is the wisest person alive and knows the best. Great, my trap had worked. After about 5 miles on this unofficial route, she starts screaming and turns so pale that she is even more white than paper. In the distance, there is a grizzly. I knew about the danger that I dragged both of us into, but in the end, it was technically her choice to go that route. I tell her to make herself as big and loud as she can. I follow suit, but the bear keeps getting closer and closer and closer. It keeps growling at us, and with every growl, Karen was getting ever more pale. After it gets way too dangerous, I shoot a round out of my rifle, and the bear gets scared and runs away into the woods. The entire ride back, she keeps yelling at me that I put her intentionally in so much danger. And yes, I'll admit it was quite reckless, taking a visitor into the part of the woods where there were bear sightings reported, but technically, she made the decision to go that route. I stay silent the entire ride because I can't keep a straight face. I was laughing maniacally in my head, and I knew that if I looked at her, I would start laughing out loud. When we returned, she was shaking violently and was as pale as ever. After I tied up her horse, she demanded that I get her the manager, and I gladly point her to the little building in the distance, and she storms off. She starts yelling at Jack, and I can see that Jack is trying his hardest not to break out laughing. I could hear that she was demanding that I be fired, but the neat part was, I wasn't an employee of Jack's. I was doing it as a favor for a friend, and thus, I couldn't be fired. After the Karen's tirade ends, Jack comes to me laughing like a kid, and he asks me, "How did you even come up with that, OP?" I start giggling as well, and I answer, "Well, she made the girl cry, so I wanted to give her some special treatment. I heard of the bear sightings, and it worked out well in my favor." He then asked me not to do that again, as it was reckless, and I agree, and I tell Jack, "Hey, I don't plan on doing it again, but I had a plan if the bear mauled the dang wretch. My defense would be that I gave her the choice to go on a safer path, but because she was apparently of higher intellect than me, I simply agreed." Jack gives me a smile and heads off. Years later, I would end up meeting that guide girl again. Her name was Abby, but nowadays I simply call her my wife. Check the property line. Okay, posted by Magnus O'Reilly. Back when I was responsible for garden and grounds related issues for a housing developer, Susan popped her head over their neighboring property's fence. Now, Susan was abrupt and rude, but not quite to Karen level, so Susan it is. "Are you going to cut back all of these weeds growing over to my side of the fence?" Yes, I have to reclaim this public footpath, and those same weeds are on council or local authority land, but they will also be causing me problems if I don't deal with it. I'm actually here to do that now. "Because it's your company land, and I expect it to be cut all the way around," she motions to all 3 sides of her white long garden fence. Look, it's growing over into my garden, and it's not been dealt with since your company bought the land." Yes, that's actually why I've been hired full time. See, I'm not part of the development crew. I'm here to maintain areas and deal with issues, well, like this. Today I can, I can clear the ivy from your fence, but, well, that triangle of wilderness between yours, ours, and the council will have to be around next week sometime. "You'll be cutting down on the other side?" Motions to where I can't see due to the triangle of wilderness. "Actually, no, that side is between you and the council. That school on the other side doesn't open for another year, so I suggest not waiting until then to contact them." "Well, what am I supposed to do?" "Hey, I'm happy to pull down the ivy for you this once and poison all along the fence line. It'll do you for now. The company I work for is trying to improve relations, and as I've stated, I'll take care of this one side indefinitely." I need you to prove that you aren't responsible for that side too." The next day, I consult my drawing map of the grounds and the property line. Turns out I was wrongly informed. My manager expressly forbids me from tackling anything remotely near her fence line. "Are you back to cut down this area?" "Hey, I'm glad you're here," and I show her the drawing. This is the area in question, and it's actually all council property. The yellow line is where my responsibility ends. Susan never had anyone cut down the vegetation. Ivy, bramble, and nettles absolutely ate her fences over the next 3 years, and last time I checked, they were replaced a meter inside the property line. Demi Karen pushes her luck and ends up losing free maintenance along her fence line. She did once ask me to put lots of poison on the offending weeds, but all I could offer her was a normal spray that my company provides if she called. I said that they might offer to do it for the same nominal price that I would do a driveway for, but she never called. My Karen aunt is jealous of my 3-year-old cousin getting cranial surgery. Posted by FoxLover96. I can't make this crap up. I'm in mobile at work, so sorry for any spelling errors. My aunt has always been a jealous and entitled creature who always tries to comb through a tragic situation to find some factor that doesn't relate to her at all to make it all about her, regardless of the situation. And if she can't find any factor, she gets mad and makes it directly known that she is the one who should be pitied. Just recently, my cousin's son had to go through a rather serious and terrifying surgery where they had to crack his skull open. He is 3 years old and was born after 4 miscarriages, so obviously the family was on pins and needles hoping for a successful surgery and a fast, painless recovery for him. Oh, except for my aunt. I'm not sure if the idea of her or her own grandson not being the one getting all the attention and positive thoughts is what threw her over the edge, despite her and her grandson being completely fine, or what, but her response was nothing short of disgusting. In the family group chat, my mom and aunt are a part of all the siblings, which I believe is about 6 people. My one uncle was sending updates all day as he had driven out to be there the day of his grandson's procedure. So, of course, everyone was replying anxiously for updates. Except my aunt. So, she took it upon herself to text my mom how annoying it was to constantly be receiving text messages from everyone about my cousin. My mom reminded her that this toddler was going through a super intense and possibly deadly surgery and that everyone was nervous. My aunt then made it apparent to point out that this kid always has problems when anyone brings him up. This is because my cousin was born quite a few months premature, so of course he has some issues going on. My mom was already mad at this and reminded her that if this was her grandson, she'd want everyone to give her and her son and his child nice comments and thoughts and prayers, and she shouldn't be acting this way about a toddler getting surgery. My aunt's only other response was that everyone was being overdramatic about him and it wasn't that serious. At that point, I almost dang near lost it. I despise this woman with a passion and a half. I can't imagine being so self-absorbed that you tell someone that a 3-year-old skull being cracked open like a coconut is overdramatic. And she wonders why nobody talks to her. I quit. Karen reported me to HR for it. Posted by Help I Hate Texas. I was the director of sales ops for a $40 million a year software company. Karen was on my team. We processed purchase orders. Karen had a small vehicle accident that put her in a neck brace. She also needed once weekly physical therapy appointments and had some restrictions on duties, all of which I accommodated, no issue. Despite meeting her needs, Karen decided coming into work was optional. HR noticed that she was repeatedly absent from work for 3 to 4 days at a time, multiple weeks in a row. They did not give me details, but told me documentation from her doctor did not justify all of these absences. To make matters worse, Karen would never give notice that she was going to be out, and sometimes would just no-show without ever calling, nor indicate how long she would be out. HR eventually told Karen that she needed to either attend work more regularly or get a doctor to sign off on short-term disability. This worked for me. I would rather Karen take extended time off so I could get a temp to take her responsibilities than be absent frequently with no warning. Karen's original doctor would not document a need for disability, so she found a doctor who would. She bragged to the team that she found a doc that would sign off on anything. So Karen went on disability, and I was able to get a temp to cover her until she returned. Even though coworkers who kept in contact told me Karen was going to clubs and dancing and such, I didn't care. That was between her and HR. For now, at least, the work was getting done. The time period of Karen's short-term disability eventually expired. At this point, she either had to come back to work or go on long-term disability so I could replace her permanently. Karen's sign anything doctor would not give her documentation for long-term disability, so Karen grudgingly came back to work. She quickly went back to being absent all of the time. She also refused to do even the basic duties of her job. I went to HR and told them things were not working out and that I wanted to replace her. They were on board with this plan. HR brought Karen in for the talk, but Karen flipped out and said she would sue. Suddenly, HR was not on board. Didn't matter that Karen really had no legal standing, just the threat of a lawsuit made HR decide that it was more important to make Karen happy than to let me have a functional ops department. In one instance, I asked Karen to do purchase order review, and she complained to HR about me bossing her around. I'm her boss. HR told me that I could no longer give assignments or work duties to Karen. What? When I said that was fine, as long as they let me hire someone else to do Karen's job, they refused to give me a request for a new employee. This went on for months, and Karen quickly learned that she could complain to HR about anything and get her way. You would not believe the accommodations she was given. Meanwhile, she made no effort to hide that she was not really injured anymore. She was barely coming to work, but was still getting paid. She even encouraged other team members to take advantage of this loophole that she had found. Then, one day during month-end crunch, Karen had not come in or called, so I called and asked her if she planned to work that day. It was a simple question, carefully crafted to be neutral in tone. She told HR that I had harassed her with my phone call. I got written up. So I immediately put in my 2 weeks notice. Not going to deal with my career being screwed up by a woman who had worked maybe 6 days in a month, especially when I gave 60 to 70 hours a week to the company. With me suddenly gone, the sales ops fell apart. Purchase orders were not going through. To address this emergency, a company's senior VP took over sales ops until my replacement could be found. HR was certainly not going to tell this guy he could not give Karen duties, so Karen actually had to work. About a month after I quit, Karen got my home number and called me, furious that she now had to actually work. She told me she was going to report me to HR for a company I no longer worked for. And sure enough, she did exactly that. I kept in touch with members of my old team, and they told me that she was laughed out of the HR office. But here is where it gets absurd. Karen called me again, cursing, screaming, and threatening me, and demanded that I give her the contact information for HR at my new company. She was going to report me to a department that had no idea who she was, nor had any jurisdiction over her complaints. The stupidity was unbelievable, and I giggled at her right up until I hung up and blocked her. Last I heard, Karen was finally fired, got 0 unemployment benefits, and ended up moving her and her kids in with her mom. Karen called the police in a nail salon, posted by DavidFam268. I'm an Asian guy that works in a nail salon in the mall. On Wednesday, I had an incident with a nasty Karen. I was greeting her and she told me that she wants a gel manicure. For anyone that doesn't know, you use a UV and LED light to cure the gel to dry, takes like 30 to 60 seconds to dry. When I sat her down, she already had an attitude by sitting far from my table, crossed her legs and out of reach. I told her, can you sit closer to the table so you don't have to reach? She got annoyed when I asked her. She told me she wanted OPI colors, Funny Bunny, Off-White, and Bubble Bath, Natural Pink, but she didn't know which color is white and which color is pink. When I started to do her hand, she looked at it every few seconds. In my head, maybe she just is a picky client. I should have stuck to my feeling that she is just here to get a free gel manicure, but I gave her the benefit of the doubt and continued. In my salon, if a client is too picky and you think you can't handle it, you can ask the manager to switch to someone else. But if no one can handle it, then the manager will ask them to leave, because in the end, you'll waste your time and the client just wants a free service. When I have done painted the gel nail base coat on her first hand, I told her to put it in the light, but she only put it like halfway in. So I told her, you have to put your hand in a little more so the gel can be cured and dry, but she refused. I don't want to put my hand all the way in. So I explained to her that if you don't do it that way, it won't be dry. She told me, I did this 1,000 times, I know what I'm doing. I told her, well, every gel light is different, you have to follow my instructions. So I show her, and I place her hand a little bit more inside the light, and I told her to just leave her hand like that until the light turned off, and it only needed to be one time, but she kept doing it 3 or 4 times, 30 seconds each time. After that, I told her to switch her hand, but she pretended like she didn't hear me until I asked her a 3rd time, and she raised her voice, I have to make a phone call. She called her friend and told them. She said, I didn't give him permission to touch me and he forced my hand into the light. I said, excuse me, miss, I didn't force your hand. I just placed it in the light a little bit more so that the gel can dry. I don't want to talk to you. This conversation is over. So I don't know why I continue this service. I should have stopped. When I finished painting her hands, I massaged her hands as well. After that, she asked to speak to the manager. Asked the manager to see the camera footage, but the manager told her only authorities or the police are allowed to see it. Karen said, then call the police. The manager told her to do that, and he called the police too. She stands up and she walks to the door, so I follow her, but I kept my distance because she didn't pay for her service yet. She told the police on the phone that she didn't feel safe in the salon because me and the manager were looking at her, so she has to stay outside. When a policeman came, she told him that I forced her hand into the light and she wants to press charges for assault. So he gave her a complaint form to fill out. I told him you can't let her go because she didn't pay for her service yet. And he said, don't worry, she's just going to go fill out the form in Starbucks, 3 doors down from the salon, and then I told him my side of the story. Thank goodness, my coworker was working on a client and they sat like 6 feet away so they heard our whole conversation with Karen. When I asked them to be my witnesses because Karen told the police I assaulted her, they were shocked and they told the police what had happened. Then another policeman arrived and they went to check the camera footage. They said if I assaulted Karen, then why did she let me massage her hands in the end of the service? And it was all on Karen. She made up lies. My manager told me later, I was doing my appointment client, that the policeman went and talked to her at Starbucks and she screamed at them and caused a scene there. I was so angry that the policeman let Karen get away without paying for her full service, false accusations, and no consequences. These types of Karens will do the same to others places because the police enabled it. Should I go to the police station and press charges? I want Karen to meet justice. Karen demands ownership of my property, but I am the owner. See if you would handle this Karen like the original poster did. Click the video on your screen so you don't miss out, and I'll see you there.